What if I told you that the greatest victory of the Native American peoples began on a perfectly peaceful summer evening, when nothing foreshadowed the approaching storm? Are you ready to learn the truth about the final hours of calm in the vast camp on the banks of the winding Little Bighorn River? That night, thousands of people gathered, dancing carefree around their campfires, celebrating life and tribal unity, while children played in the grass, unaware of the scale of the tragedy to come. In the morning, General Custer arrived in the valley with his cavalry, fully confident of a swift victory and easy glory. Imagine the scale of this confrontation, where a handful of brave warriors faced a regular army with orders to wipe them off the face of the earth. How exactly did the scattered tribes manage to unite in a matter of hours and devise a brilliant tactical plan that caught experienced military leaders off guard? And why did the general's arrogance become his greatest mistake? Watch the video until the end, and you'll learn how the Lakota's daily life and evening rituals became the prelude to an epoch-making event that forever changed the course of the Wild West history. In the meantime, get comfortable, be sure to like this video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new exciting historical investigations. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about lies in the incredible complexity of the structure of the massive Native American camp. The vast settlement stretched nearly 5 kilometers along the winding banks of the Little Bighorn River. 7,000 people were arranged in strict order according to the ancient traditions of their tribes. The camp consisted of 6 separate circles, each belonging to a specific Lakota or Cheyenne group. At the center of each circle was a large open space for communal gatherings and important ceremonies. The dwellings were not arranged haphazardly, but with precise calculation of wind directions and the sun's position. The entrances of all tipis traditionally faced east to be the first to greet the morning rays. The design of the tents was a masterpiece of mobile architecture, ideally suited for a nomadic lifestyle. The foundation was a sturdy frame made of long pine poles, skillfully tied together. A thick covering of carefully tanned bison hides was stretched over the poles. The thickness and quality of the hides provided excellent insulation against the nighttime chill and the daytime heat. Special smoke vents at the top of the teepee allowed for regulating the draft for the indoor hearths. By operating these vents with long poles, the inhabitants maintained a comfortable temperature. The lower edge of the hides was pressed tightly to the ground with heavy stones and wooden pegs. This reliably protected the interior from strong gusts of the steppe wind. Inside the teepee, the space was divided into strictly functional zones according to unspoken rules. The central part was always occupied by a small round hearth lined with smooth river stones. Soft animal skins were spread around the hearth, serving as both rugs and sleeping areas. Special leather bags called parflashi were placed along the walls to store dried food. Spare clothing, tools, and everyday items were also neatly folded there. Every item in the dwelling had its own designated place for maximum convenience. This allowed the camp's inhabitants to quickly gather their belongings in case of a sudden move. The space behind the hearth was considered the most honorable and was reserved for the head of the family. Wooden backrests, woven from willow twigs, provided comfortable support for those sitting. The heat from the burning firewood was evenly distributed throughout the cone-shaped room. There was enough space between the individual yurts for free passage and the placement of utility structures. Near each dwelling stood tall wooden tripods for storing valuables. Leather shields, weapon sheaths, and ceremonial headdresses were fastened to these tripods. This arrangement protected important items from the dampness of the ground and accidental damage. The outer surfaces of many tipis were decorated with intricate geometric patterns and designs. These designs served as a kind of identity for the owners, telling the story of their lineage. The paints were made from natural minerals, ground into a fine powder and mixed with fat. Bright ochre, black, and white lines stood out clearly against the light-colored hides. In the rays of the setting sun, the painted tents took on a particularly solemn and majestic appearance. The ground around the tents had been firmly trampled by thousands of feet during the few days of the encampment. The tall prairie grass remained untouched only on the distant outskirts of the vast camp. The evening air was filled with the scents of smoke, roasted meat, and blooming grasses. Hundreds of campfires were lit simultaneously, transforming the valley into a sea of flickering lights. This scene demonstrated the incredible strength and unity of the indigenous peoples of the plains. The camp's architecture reflected a deep understanding of the laws of nature and social bonds. Every person knew exactly their place in this complex and harmonious system. The huge gathering of people did not descend into chaos thanks to strict discipline and respect for traditions. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the organization of such large-scale mobile settlements. Share your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. The secret that people pay thousands for lies in the incredible efficiency of ancient culinary techniques. On the evening of June 25th, hundreds of hearths simultaneously crackled with the sound of dry branches. The staple of the diet was nutritious bison meat, obtained during recent large-scale hunts. Pieces of meat were skewered on long willow rods and slowly roasted over hot coals. Drops of fat fell onto the scorching stones, sending thick, aromatic smoke into the air. Wooden frames for drying thinly sliced strips of meat were set up next to the fires. The warm wind and smoke from the hearths quickly transformed the fresh cuts into a supply of long-lasting food. The cooking process required constant attention and skill from everyone involved. Large pieces were carefully turned to prevent burning and ensure even cooking. Food prepared in this way retained all its nutritional value for many months. In addition to meat, the diet included a variety of wild edible plants that had been gathered. Wild turnips, dug up from the surrounding hills, were peeled of their tough skin. Their tubers were baked in hot ashes until they reached a soft, bread-like consistency. Sweet berries were mixed with ground meat and fat to create nutritious pemmican. This high-calorie mixture served as the main source of energy during long treks. Unique cooking techniques that did not require metal cookware were used. Fresh water was poured directly from the Little Bighorn River into the thick stomachs of bison. Then, using wooden tongs, stones heated over a fire were lowered into this water. The water quickly came to a boil, allowing them to cook thick, rich stews made from meat and roots. This cooking method preserved all the vitamins and made the dishes surprisingly delicious. The camp's supply of fresh water was replenished continuously until sunset. Leather wineskins and jugs made from dried pumpkins were filled with cool river water. The filled containers were carefully placed inside the teepee in the coolest spots. Clean water was vital for sustaining the strength of a huge number of people. Access to the river was carefully guarded to prevent contamination of this vital source. Cooking tools were simple, yet highly reliable. Knives were skillfully carved from bone or chiseled from hard stone. Wooden mortars and pestles were used to grind dried berries and hard roots. Wide, flat stones served as convenient cutting boards for fresh meat. After use, all utensils were thoroughly cleaned with sand and rinsed in running water. The evening meal was an important social ritual that brought entire families together. People gathered around the fires, leisurely passing pieces of hot food to one another. Food was distributed strictly according to seniority, expressing deep respect for age and experience. The best and most tender pieces always went to the tribe's elders. The communal meal helped strengthen family ties and maintain internal harmony. Leftovers were carefully gathered and packed away in paflashes. Not a single edible scrap was thrown away, as food was considered a sacred gift. Dried provisions were hung high under the dome of the teepee, where smoke from the hearth gathered. This smoke served as a natural preservative and deterred unwanted guests. Proper food storage ensured the tribe's survival during periods of poor hunting. The preparation of food that evening was no different from hundreds of evenings before. Monotonous movements, honed over centuries, brought calm and confidence in the day ahead. The smell of cooked food mingled with the scent of blooming sage and dry prairie grass. The camp went about its measured life, following the eternal rhythms of nature. Nothing during dinner foreshadowed the massive upheavals looming at dawn. The skillful use of natural resources allowed indigenous peoples to thrive on the Great Plains. Every detail of daily life reflected millennia of human interaction with the harsh environment. The ability to build reliable food reserves ensured the tribe's stability during the long winter months. How difficult do you think it was to adapt to such a diet while constantly on the move? Are you ready to learn how a massive camp coordinated its activities without a single spoken word in the next chapter? What I am about to reveal is banned in 12 countries due to the high secrecy of this ancient knowledge. The camp's visual communication system surpassed many modern equivalents in effectiveness. The settlement's vast territory required methods for transmitting information over long distances. Instead of loud shouts, the inhabitants used a complex language of symbols, understandable only to the initiated. Every detail of the dwelling's exterior design carried an encrypted message for those around them. Tall poles with leather shields attached were erected in front of the entrances to many tipis. The position of the shield on the pole served as a clear indicator of the owner's current status. If the shield was raised high, it signaled readiness to receive important guests and engage in negotiations. A shield lowered to the ground delicately informed neighbors of the family's desire for privacy. This simple system helped avoid awkward situations and maintain order. Colored strips of dyed leather served as a kind of information board. They were tied to the tops of the frame poles and fluttered in the wind. Combinations of red, black, and yellow strips signaled recent successes on hunting expeditions. A specific pattern of knots on the strip might indicate the group's planned movements. An experienced observer could read the entire history of a single family just by looking at the fluttering strips. The arrangement of the tipis themselves within the tribal circle was also part of a complex code. The tents of prominent leaders were always located in strictly designated spots opposite the main entrance to the circle. The distance between neighboring dwellings indicated the degree of kinship between families. The closer the teepee stood, the closer the blood ties of their inhabitants. A glance at the camp layout allowed one to instantly draw up an accurate map of the tribe's social relationships. Personal belongings left outside served as markers of membership in specific social groups. Specially decorated spears stuck into the ground at the entrance indicated the dwellings of members of elite brotherhoods. Carvings on the shaft told of the weapon owner's personal experiences and achievements. The way leather straps were woven on saddles differed among clans and served as a distinguishing mark. Not a single detail was random in this sea of coded information. In the evening, visual signals gave way to a complex system of acoustic markers. The quiet tapping of wooden mallets in a specific rhythm summoned people to local councils. Melodies played on reed flutes conveyed invitations to evening meals. The sounds did not overlap, creating a harmonious background that every resident could understand. This soundscape ensured uninterrupted communication as twilight deepened. The variety of patterns on clothing also served as a powerful means of nonverbal communication. Geometric patterns made from dyed porcupine quills unmistakably indicated a person's tribal affiliation. The Cheyenne used certain color combinations, while the Lakota preferred entirely different ones. This allowed them to instantly identify a person even in the dim light of a vast settlement. The patterns were as easy to read as an open book, conveying information about origin and status. Markings were even applied to the bodies of horses grazing on the outskirts of the large camp. Ochre circles and lines around the animal's eyes served as a unique identification system. These markings allowed owners to easily find their horses in the vast herd. The complex system of paint markings prevented any disputes over the ownership of valuable animals. All these invisible threads of information firmly bound thousands of people into a single whole. The unique ability to convey vast amounts of data without a single word is truly astonishing. This hidden coordination system made the camp an incredibly organized and cohesive mechanism. A deep understanding of the symbols was instilled in every person from the earliest years of life. Appreciate the genius of this ancient system of nonverbal communication right now. Be sure to like this video to support our channel and the release of new historical videos. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the true meaning of indigenous evening gatherings? As soon as the last rays of the sun disappeared behind the hills, the camp was enveloped in a rhythmic hum. The gatherings that night had nothing to do with preparing for aggressive actions. These were traditional social events celebrating life, a successful hunt, and tribal unity. People donned their finest attire, richly adorned with beads and long fringe. Large ritual fires were lit in the center of each tribal circle. Hundreds of people gathered around these fires to take part in communal ceremonies. The beating of large drums set a unified rhythm for everyone present in the clearing. The rhythm gradually quickened, drawing more and more participants into a smooth circular motion. These sounds carried far beyond the Little Bighorn River Valley. The women performed their parts with incredible dignity and grace. Their movements were fluid and measured, symbolizing a strong connection to the earth. Heavy deerskin dresses, adorned with thousands of beads, made a soft rustling sound. The rhythmic swaying in time with the drums created a hypnotic visual effect in the light of the flames. The women's songs filled the evening air, with deep, melodious sounds. The men demonstrated their physical strength and remarkable endurance through their movements. Their complex steps imitated the power of massive bison and the swiftness of mountain streams. Headdresses swayed majestically with every sharp turn of the body. Special anklets made from deer hooves jingled on the dancers' feet. Every leap and turn was filled with hidden energy and deep meaning. The clearing served as a place for representatives of different clans to exchange news. During brief breaks, people shared stories of recent journeys and encounters. Social bonds were strengthened through shared participation in these ancient rituals. The elders watched the proceedings closely, seated in places of honor by the fire. Their presence lent the ceremony a special weight and solemnity. The light from the bonfires illuminated the focused faces of the dancers in the darkness. Shadows danced whimsically across the high white walls of the surrounding tipis. The air grew thick with rising dust and the heat of the burning logs. The entire valley pulsed in unison, like one enormous, living heart. That night seemed like an endless celebration of life across the boundless expanse of the plains. Various societies within the tribe held their own local gatherings. Each such society had unique songs, specific rhythms, and strict rules of performance. The rituals served as a way to preserve historical memory and pass on traditions to new generations. Participants repeated the movements their ancestors had performed for centuries. No external circumstances could disrupt this sacred order of things. As midnight approached, the intensity of the movements began to slowly subside. The rhythm of the drums grew calmer, preparing the people for a night's rest. The ceremony participants gradually dispersed to their tents, carrying with them a sense of deep unity. The large bonfires burned down, leaving behind only piles of red, flickering embers. The camp was preparing to sink into a long-awaited sleep before the new dawn. The festive atmosphere of that night stood in stark contrast to the events of the coming morning. People rejoiced in life, unaware that these were their last peaceful hours. The traditional dances became an unwitting farewell ceremony for many of that evening's participants. Do you think the elders sensed the approach of an imminent threat? In the next chapter, you will learn what quiet craftwork was being done in the tents just before bedtime. Away from the noisy gathering places, the quiet artisanal life of the camp went on. Inside the many tents, people were busy repairing equipment and creating new tools. This painstaking work required good lighting, so the hearths were kept burning brightly. The craftsmen used every spare moment to keep their equipment in perfect condition. The quality of their gear directly determined their chances of survival in the harsh conditions of the prairies. One of the main tasks was making and straightening arrows for hunting. Straight dogwood shoots were carefully stripped of their bark using bone scrapers. Then the wooden blanks were slowly heated over coals to make them flexible. The craftsman would clamp the warm wood between his teeth or use a special bone tool to straighten it perfectly. A straight arrow ensured an accurate flight and a successful hit on the target. Fitting the arrow feathers required precision and immense patience from the maker. Stiff feathers were split in half and carefully tied to the shaft with thin tendons. A strong glue, boiled down from the hooves and horns of ungulates, was used for secure fastening. Properly secured elements ensured the projectile's stable rotation in the air. The entire process took several hours of focused and methodical work. Nearby, work was underway to sharpen stone and metal projectile points. Hard flint was worked by carefully chipping off small flakes with a special horn scraper. Every movement of the craftsman was honed by 1,000 years of working with the unyielding stone. Metal tips, obtained through trade, were shaped on flat grinding stones. The sharpness of these items was tested by lightly touching a taut hair. Great attention was paid to the repair and reinforcement of horse harnesses. The leather straps of the saddles were regularly lubricated with animal fat to maintain their incredible flexibility. Worn sections of bridles were replaced with new strips of durable rawhide. Parts were sewn together using thin bone needles and strong sinew thread. Reliable harness was essential for safely controlling a horse at high speeds. Women also spent their evenings engaged in monotonous but important work. They tanned hides using special scrapers with sharp stone blades. The leather was thoroughly cleaned of fat residues and kneaded until it became incredibly soft. The material was then rubbed with a mixture of natural ingredients for the final treatment. This leather was used to make warm clothing and sturdy coverings for dwellings. Embroidery using beads and porcupine quills required excellent eyesight and patience. Multicolored elements were carefully sewn onto the leather base with small, even stitches. Patterns were created from memory without any preliminary sketches or drawings. The finished products were striking for their geometric precision and rich color combinations. This work transformed ordinary clothing into true works of traditional art. The tools used in the craft were carefully stored in special leather cases. Every scraper, needle, or knife had its own strictly designated place. The orderliness of the workspace allowed the artisans to work even in low light. Knowledge was passed down from the older generation to the younger during these quiet evening gatherings. The craft was an integral part of the tribe's daily survival and cultural identity. Late in the evening, work gradually slowed down, giving way to growing fatigue. Finished items were neatly stacked along the walls inside the spacious conical tents. Tools were put away in perflashi until the next suitable moment. The hearths were stoked down, leaving only the faint glow of smoldering pine logs. The camp concluded its working day, sinking into a state of deep repose. What would happen if no one found out about this mysterious change in the weather in the river valley? As midnight approached, the atmosphere around the vast camp began to shift imperceptibly. The heat of the day finally receded, replaced by the piercing night chill of the Great Plains. A light breeze rustled through the crowns of the tall cottonwood trees growing along the banks. Nature seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the historic events of the coming day. Sounds carried surprisingly far through the night air. The murmur of water over the rapids of the Little Bighorn River seemed incredibly loud. The snorting of horses grazing in the vast meadows blended into a single background hum. Rare nocturnal sounds pierced the silence, compelling one to listen intently to the darkness. This soundscape was familiar and soothing to every inhabitant of the vast settlement. The valley's physical and geographical conditions created an ideal natural fortress for nomadic peoples. High hills reliably sheltered the camp from cold winds and prying eyes. The winding riverbed provided natural protection from several vulnerable directions. The wide meadows provided abundant fodder for the huge herds of riding and draft horses. The choice of this location for the encampment demonstrated the deep tactical acumen of the tribal leaders. A thick fog began to rise slowly from the cooling surface of the river. A whitish veil enveloped the lower parts of the Tipis, giving the camp a mystical appearance. The humidity rose noticeably, prompting people to wrap themselves more tightly in warm bison hides. Smoke from dying campfires drifted low over the ground, mingling with the river mist. The outlines of the tents dissolved into the haze, transforming the settlement into a ghost town. The camp's enormous size created its own unique microclimate in the valley. The heat emanating from thousands of people and hearths warmed the cold night air. The temperature difference between the center of the settlement and its outskirts was quite noticeable. Air currents constantly circulated between the conical structures, providing good ventilation. This thermodynamic system worked flawlessly, maintaining comfort in every dwelling. The outer edges of the camp gradually sank into absolute impenetrable darkness. People weary after a long day found peace beneath the arches of their secure shelters. Only rare sparks flew from the smoke vents, rising toward the starry sky. A vast mass of people breathed in unison to the steady rhythm of deep nighttime sleep. The safety of the enormous settlement seemed absolute and unshakable on this peaceful summer midnight. The starry sky above the Great Plains was striking in its incredible depth and brightness. The absence of artificial light allowed one to see the Milky Way in the finest detail. The tribe's ancient astronomers read the time from these stars and predicted the changing of the seasons. The cosmic vault served as a reliable navigator and calendar for the nomadic peoples of America. Observing the constellations was an integral part of their nightly routine. The ground released the heat it had accumulated during the day, warming the people lying on it. Thick animal skins on the floor of the teepee created an ideal insulating layer against the dampness. The design of the tents successfully withstood the falling dew, keeping the interior completely dry. The engineering solutions underlying the dwellings proved most effective precisely at night. Man and nature existed in a state of perfect and harmonious balance. The passage of time in the night camp was measured not by the clock, but by the movement of the constellations. Each phase of the night had its own significance and required specific actions from the guards. The dead of night was considered a time of rest, when physical strength was restored for the new day. The camp's vast machinery slowed to a minimum. The silence of the valley only underscored the scale of the human power lying dormant within it. The remarkable harmony of that night will forever remain in the memory of the few surviving eyewitnesses. Nature provided the people with ideal conditions for rest before the great trials to come. The tranquility of the prairie contrasted with the tension that hung far beyond the horizon. Have you ever wondered how much the weather and landscape influenced the outcome of historical conflicts? In the next chapter, you will learn how the women ensured the camp's safety before going to sleep. Women played a fundamental role in maintaining safety and order in the camp. They were the ones who took responsibility for preparing the settlement for the long night. Their duties included checking all the fastenings on the enormous conical tents. Pegs were driven deeper into the ground to protect against sudden gusts of wind. Smoke vents were carefully adjusted with long poles to retain internal heat. Special attention was paid to preserving strategic food and clean water supplies. The women moved dried meat from open drying racks into secure shelters. This prevented the valuable food from spoiling due to morning dew. Containers of drinking water were covered with thick pieces of leather to protect them from dust. Every ounce of supplies was under the strict and watchful control of the women. The hearths also required special attention before everyone finally went to sleep. Open flames were extinguished to prevent accidental fires inside the cramped dwellings. The embers were carefully raked into the center of the fire pit and covered with a thin layer of ash. This trick allowed the heat to be preserved until the early morning without using firewood. In the morning, it was enough to simply fan these embers to quickly rekindle the fire. The women checked the readiness of the transport equipment in case of unforeseen circumstances. The wooden travois were stored in easily accessible places near the teepee. Leather straps and bridles were neatly hung on special interior poles. Keeping things in order ensured lightning-fast packing in the event of any sudden threat. This methodical work had become second nature through years of continuous nomadic practice. Organizing the interior of the teepee before bedtime was also a woman's task. Sleeping places were laid out in strict accordance with the family's social hierarchy. Warm blankets made of bison hides were distributed so that no one would freeze at night. Tools and household items were stored in the corners, clearing the center of the room. The open space prevented injuries when moving around in complete darkness. Women were also responsible for preparing special ceremonial clothing for the men. Formal shirts and leggings were dusted with soft tufts of dry grass. Minor repairs to clothing were made quickly and discreetly by the light of smoldering coals. Every bead and every decorative element had to be in its perfect place. Ensuring a warrior's impeccable appearance was considered a matter of honor for every self-respecting woman. Medical supplies were checked and arranged in a strict and logical order. Pouches of dried medicinal herbs were hung in the driest parts of the dwelling. Echinacea roots and sage leaves were always kept close at hand in case of need. The healers sorted through their tools, preparing for any unforeseen situations. Their knowledge of herbal medicine saved hundreds of lives in harsh conditions. Evening prayers and quiet hymns marked the end of the women's workday. These rituals were intended to protect the family from evil nighttime forces. The monotonous sounds calmed the mind and prepared the body for restful sleep. Spiritual practice was inseparable from daily physical and domestic chores. Belief in the protection of higher powers gave people confidence in the future. By midnight, all activity inside the dwellings had completely ceased. The women were the last to go to sleep, having ensured the complete safety of their loved ones. Their unobtrusive yet colossal labor served as the foundation of stability for the entire tribe. The camp slept, securely sheltered and protected by caring female hands. This night became the last testament to a peaceful routine before the coming upheavals. In the culture of the Plains tribes, a person's appearance was an open book of their life. Preparing clothes for the next day was an important and meticulous evening ritual. Every detail of the wardrobe carried deep symbolic meaning and a social message. Deerskin shirts were decorated with intricate geometric patterns made from porcupine quills. The color scheme of these patterns strictly corresponded to membership in a specific clan. Footwear, or moccasins, was made from the strongest and softest rawhide. In the evening, the soles of the moccasins were checked for wear after a long day. If necessary, worn areas were reinforced with additional layers of durable material. The embroidery on the upper part of the shoes told the story of the journey taken and the owner's status. High-quality moccasins were critical for moving quickly and silently. Applying paint to the face and body required special mineral pigments. Red ochre, symbolizing vitality, was carefully stored in special leather pouches. The powder was mixed with animal fat to create a durable and vibrant paste. The designs were applied before important events, serving both as decoration and spiritual protection. Preparing these paints took considerable time and required specific skills. Particular attention was paid to the intricate, handcrafted ceremonial headdresses. Each element of the design symbolized an outstanding deed or an act of personal bravery. The headdress's details were carefully smoothed out and dusted off with light finger movements. Damaged fastenings were replaced with new ones made from durable natural fibers. Such a headdress was the highest honor and a source of immense pride for its owner. Hair was also considered an important element of personal identity and spiritual strength. Men and women carefully combed their long locks with special bone combs. Hair was braided into tight plaits and adorned with long leather ribbons. Round metal plaques and colored glass beads were woven into the strands. This procedure was a form of meditation and preparation of the mind for new trials. Personal talismans and amulets were inspected and brought into perfect order. Small leather pouches containing sacred objects were worn around the neck or on the belt. The contents of these pouches were known only to their owners and kept secret. It was believed that talismans concentrated the protective energy of the surrounding world. Their correct placement on the body guaranteed safety during any conflict. Warm clothing made of thick materials was prepared for cold night watches. Heavy cloaks were folded so they could be quickly thrown over the shoulders. These garments provided maximum comfort and protection from biting winds. The way a cloak was draped indicated a person's mood and current intentions. When worn correctly, the garment did not restrict movement and allowed for the fastest possible action. The fringe on the sleeves and trousers served important practical and aesthetic functions. The long, thin strips of leather helped water run off quickly during heavy rain. When in motion, the fringe created a distinctive visual effect, emphasizing the body's movement. In the evening, these strips were untangled and straightened to maintain a perfect appearance. Well-maintained clothing was a sign of discipline and high status within the tribe. Copper and silver ornaments were polished to a bright, blinding shine. Wide bracelets and heavy breastplates reflected the light of smoldering campfires. Metal was obtained through complex trade with distant tribes or European merchants. The presence of metal items indicated the wealth and influence of an entire family. The jingle of these ornaments was an integral part of the acoustic backdrop of the vast camp. Preparing the wardrobe was the final step in getting one's appearance in order. Clothes were neatly arranged on special stands made of polished wood inside the teepee. People fell asleep confident that their appearance was fully ready for the new morning. No one could foresee the conditions under which they would have to put these clothes on at dawn. The evening routine provided a sense of stability and deep inner peace. The safety of the vast settlement depended on the flawless work of the night watchmen and scouts. The outer perimeter of the camp was under constant and vigilant visual surveillance. Experienced warriors took up concealed positions on the high ground surrounding the Little Bighorn River Valley. Their task was to detect the slightest changes in the familiar nighttime landscape. Darkness was no obstacle to those who had known how to read the signs of nature since birth. Communication between the sentries was carried out using a system of quiet and discreet signals. A whistle, mimicking the rustle of the wind in dry grass, conveyed information about a change in the situation. The sounds did not attract the attention of outsiders, blending into the natural background of the prairie. Every warrior knew exactly where his comrades were located for many kilometers around. This invisible network of surveillance covered the entire vast territory of the sleeping camp. Scouts carefully examined the ground in search of any suspicious traces. They could determine when a footprint had been made by the degree to which the grass blades were bent. The direction of the flattened grass indicated the route taken by potential enemies. The temperature of the trail could indicate how long ago strangers had passed through here. This analytical skill allowed them to reconstruct the sequence of events with remarkable accuracy. Particular attention was paid to observing air currents and changes in the wind. A sudden gust could carry the faintest scent of foreign smoke or dust. The scouts could distinguish the natural scents of the prairie from those created by humans. This unique olfactory radar worked flawlessly across vast open spaces. The wind was one of their main allies in ensuring security. The sentries' physical endurance allowed them to remain completely motionless for hours. They blended into the terrain, becoming utterly invisible in the night mist. Special dark-colored clothing helped them disappear among the rocks and shadows. Their ability to control their breathing made their presence completely concealed. Only incredible discipline made it possible to carry out this complex and responsible duty. A rotation system for the sentries ensured that the observer's senses remained constantly alert. Shifts took place silently and at strictly defined times based on the position of the stars. Resting warriors were stationed in small hidden shelters not far from their posts. This allowed them to instantly reinforce security in the event of an unexpected danger. The seamless operation of this system guaranteed a peaceful sleep for thousands of people. Monitoring the river was also a crucial part of securing the perimeter. The water could mask the sound of unwanted guests approaching along the riverbed. The sentries listened intently to the rhythm of the rapids, ready to detect any deviations in their sound. The reflection of the stars on the water's surface helped them spot dark silhouettes against the backdrop of the river. The Little Bighorn River was under just as strict surveillance as the land approaches. Scouts returned from distant patrols, reporting the situation to senior leaders. Reports were relayed in hushed whispers in teepees set aside for this purpose. Analysis of the data allowed for adjustments to the deployment of forces the following day. No report was ignored, no matter how insignificant the information might seem. Teamwork was the key to survival in conditions of constant potential threat. As morning approached, tension at the post traditionally and noticeably increased. The hours before dawn were considered the most likely time for a sudden enemy attack. The contours of the hills became clearer, demanding even greater concentration. The cold reached its peak, testing the physical endurance of the frozen sentries. The sentries mobilized all their inner reserves for the final push before dawn. The night watch's work that night was carried out flawlessly and professionally. The camp remained completely undisturbed until the very first rays of the sun. None of the sentries detected the approach of General Custer's massive military machine. The United States Army had approached unnoticed, taking advantage of the distant terrain. The guards had faithfully fulfilled their duty within the territory they were able to control. The final phase of the night, just before dawn, was always the quietest and deepest. The air temperature in the valley had dropped to its lowest point of the day. The vast camp of thousands of teepees was immersed in absolute, almost palpable stillness. Even the most restless inhabitants of the settlement found temporary solace in sleep. The nature of the Great Plains had paused its movement, awaiting the arrival of the new warm sun. The breathing of the sleeping people created a steady and continuous acoustic background inside the dwellings. A faint white vapor escaped from the smoke vents, condensing in the cold air. The sheets of bison hides reliably retained the remnants of the evening's warmth from the extinguished hearths. The interior of the conical tents seemed like small islands of absolute safety. People gathered their strength, completely unaware of what the coming day would bring. The first barely noticeable gray streak of the approaching morning appeared on the horizon. The stars began to fade slowly, dissolving into the pale eastern sky. The contours of the distant mountain ranges began to take on clearer and sharper outlines. The wind had died down completely, leaving behind a deafening and heavy pre-dawn silence. This transitional moment between night and day always possessed a special mystical power. Dew covered the tall prairie grass around the vast sleeping settlement. Drops of water glistened on the taut skins of the drums and the wooden tripods. This moisture promised to make the early morning hours fresh and cool. Nature was carefully washing the river valley before it became the scene of historic events. Nothing in the surrounding landscape hinted at the approaching tragedy. In some teepees, the elders had already begun to open their eyes, greeting the new day. They quietly recited their morning prayers, thanking the higher powers for the gift of life. Their quiet whispers blended with the awakening sounds of the prairie surrounding them. The elders were the first to step outside to greet the rising sun above the horizon. Their morning rituals had remained unchanged throughout many decades of nomadic life. The sleeping camp was a grand and majestic sight from the heights of the hills. Thousands of teepees were arranged in perfect geometric patterns along the winding riverbed. This city of leather and wood seemed like an eternal and unshakable bastion of culture. The scale of the settlement instilled confidence in their own strength and absolute invincibility. No tribe had ever gathered such a vast number of people together before. The dramatic irony of this night lies in its incredible and profound calm. People fell asleep thinking of the upcoming festivities, hunting, and social ceremonies. No one could have imagined that in a few hours this valley would turn into a battlefield. This serenity makes the events that followed all the more stark and shocking. The last peaceful sleep of the Lakota and Cheyenne became a symbol of the passing era of the open plains. The first women on watch had already begun to stoke the red embers hidden beneath the ashes. Thin wisps of gray smoke once again drifted toward the brightening morning sky. The life of the vast mechanism began to gradually accelerate after a long night's pause. The camp was waking up to greet June 25th, 1876. This day would forever change the fates of all those involved in the impending large-scale conflict. General Custer and his cavalry were already within striking distance. Soldiers in blue uniforms were preparing to deliver their unexpected and devastating blow. The era of pre-contact wars and nomadic freedom was rapidly approaching its inevitable end. But in these final moments of the morning, the camp still went about its usual life. History froze for a moment, only to then descend upon the Little Bighorn River Valley. Today we looked at how the last peaceful night unfolded in the vast Lakota camp. This story shows just how complex and harmonious the daily life of the indigenous peoples of North America was. Their daily lives were filled with deep meaning, strict discipline, and respect for nature. Please suggest topics in the comments for future videos that you'd like to see on our channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new in-depth videos about the history of the Great Plains.